to do this career, but there's so many barriers, not only cost, but then once you get there, the culture, the attitude, how people treat you, what they value, like it keeps people out. And it's not fair because it really does take opportunities away from people in our community who are more than capable of doing this work and excelling at so many things.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, very much appreciated the mention of the GI Bill, because if you think about the opportunities that generation to be able to have a house, what that translates to many generations later, it's just amazing. Okay, I'm going to go back to Stephanie. I want to know, do you think it's helpful for us to be recognizing like these privileges? Does it help ease the burden a little bit about imposter syndrome, knowing that the colleagues around us might have these advantages that are not a reflection of our talent?
Yeah, I definitely think it's important to keep that in mind, because I think sometimes when you're dealing with imposter syndrome, you tend to overwork. And as we all know, jobs never want to pay you overtime. So you are doing so much work that you don't even have to do, right? And you're always questioning, like, oh my God, like, am I good at this? Am I not? Like, they're not vibing the same way. Like, I don't really know. And it's because the system was always meant to question you. So it's a good reminder to always tell yourself, like, oh, no, people are funny here. It's funny here. It's funny. And it's also important when you have the chance to have those conversations in your workspace, but it's not your job to create a space for you to feel, it's not your job to then create the space for them to believe that you know what you're doing. They hire you because they knew what you were doing. Like, how many times we have managers that you know you could be a better manager than them. So it's not your job to do that. It's their job to be like, I should believe people's work. I should believe that the folks I hire are smart and can do these things. It is their job to do that. And so, yeah.
Yeah. And what you shared reminds me a little bit. I referenced the likability trap in this book by journalist Alicia Menendez, and she examined that some of the feedback that women typically get is not based on their performance. It's like these warm and fuzzy things like, well, I didn't like your attitude, instead of like measurable results. Okay, did I meet my sales goals? So you're kind of illuminating a little bit of that there. Let's go back to Queen Victoria. I want to know a little bit about, actually, let me back up. I think I went out of order there. Let me go back to Lina. Sorry. Lina, can you tell me about a time in which you experienced imposter syndrome? And if you can tell me if you did something about it, or if you didn't, what would you have liked to have happened?
So I was thinking about this, and I think one experience that really stood out to me when I was thinking about this was an experience that I had in law school. And in law school, the law school that I went to, there was this kind of attitude that if you wanted to do an extracurricular to like beef up your resume, Black students of color would do trial team, because it's like more about the performance and evoking emotions. And they were like, Black kids and Latinx and people of color are good at that. And then white students would do moot court because it was more intellectual and it was more about legal analysis. And they would say that that's what white students are good at. It's just, we can't explain it. It's just how it is. And so when I was getting a chance to pick an activity, I was like, actually, I think I am interested in moot court just because of the way that it works. And I'm interested in that legal analysis. And getting onto the team, I was one of two. They were like, this is the most Black people we've ever had. We had 3 Black people on the team of 12. And I noticed from the get-go that my white peers treated me differently. They wouldn't include me on like emails. They wouldn't include me at meetings. Like all of a sudden, there was never clear communication. And I started to really internalize it and be like, wait, what's going on? They must know that I don't know what we're talking about, that I don't understand these things we're talking about. And I started to think about all of that until we had to do like a preview of an argument we had to give. And I was stressed. Like I had an anxiety attack before it. Like I was like so stressed about it. And I was like, I didn't finish it. Like they're gonna know. And then I did my preview of my argument, and it was better than everybody's. It was better than everybody's. My professor was like, oh, you did such a great job. You understood everything. And that's when I was like, oh, it's not me, it's them. They're actually treating me differently because they're assuming things about my ability to perform just based on my race, based on my gender, that have nothing to do with what I can actually do. And I had to like really take a step back and like, I'd be like, you gotta boss up. Like this, you're in law school. This is your experience. Like you can do this. And like I found that in spaces of higher education, and especially these like elite educational spaces, like people will question your intelligence, and you have to be in like know within yourself. Like, no, they could question me, but that doesn't mean I have to question myself.
I love that. They can question me, but that doesn't mean I have to question myself. I love that. Thank you very much. Very, very powerful story. Thanks for sharing that reflection. Now, Queen Victoria, I mentioned earlier that one of the advantages that some folks have is just they have like this built-in network, or they could have sponsors at work that could speak up for them. But many of us may not have access to that network. So what are some ways that as allies or as peers, we can support each other and show up for each other?
Well, I think that some of the ways that we can support each other or help each other in that process is one, being a mentor, especially for others, to make sure that others come along. And I do think that also is being able to talk about the fact that we experience imposter syndrome. I think we don't share it often enough because it sometimes is construed as like, you're being fake, or that somehow you're admitting to having something wrong or having done something wrong, or the fake it till you make it mentality then has become pejorative. But the reality is for those that, especially that are change makers and creating things that have not existed before, you've had to fake it till you make it. And I think that we have to demystify that, and also take away the negativity through which it's viewed. But one major thing is definitely being a mentor to someone. I think that's not happening enough in our communities. And I really do mean carving out that time to be available.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. And I want to add a little bit more about this idea of being a mentor, very important. And if you have the means, back that mentorship up with financial support, because that's kind of the network that many of us don't have access to. And of course, but at the same time, it's like another challenge for us as people of color to do that for others, right? But until the system is blown completely away, these are some ways that we can show up for each other. So now to you, Dr. Mera, what does it look like for a leader or a mentor to help others battle imposter syndrome? What does it actually look like?
Yeah, that's a really good question because of what Queen Victoria was saying, that mentorship can be so critical. And there's really a lot of different things you can do to help, but I try to pick like just 3 that people can actually keep in their heads for later. If you're a manager, you can keep track of what each person on your team has been doing and accomplishing that, and then also encourage them and keep track of that encouragement too. And ask them to also keep track of it, because that will help sort of bust through this idea of like, well, I haven't really contributed that much. And for the manager themselves, you can use that information to make sure that busy work like taking notes, or unpaid work like mentoring, or like training new hires or things like that is actually being distributed evenly, because Latinas often, and other women of color often get stuck with like the office busy work. So like the strategizing and things that are like maybe not super central to the program, but are still important for it to move forward. And this also means that you have to make sure that high profile projects and giving recognition, either publicly or privately, is happening for every person on the team, not just the loudest person in the room. If you're a mentor, be sure to point out when your mentees are experiencing feelings of inadequacy and remind them of those successes, much like you would as a manager, and just how those accomplishments.
Kind of lost you there for a second, or I did.
The last point?
There you go. Yes, if you can repeat that very last point. It went away for just a second.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Maybe it's my internet.
If you're a mentor, you want to be sure to point out to your mentees when they are expressing feelings of inadequacy, not that they can't feel bad or they can't have bad times, but just really remind them of the successes that you have watched them make or that they have shared with you. And like, you know, those accomplishments didn't happen because of magic. They happened because of real experience, real work. And that will sort of help them remind themselves that they're awesome. And for all leaders, really, I mean, just go to the root of it. Like, tackle discrimination at your organization, whether it's a university, a company, a nonprofit, and just really get to the root of why somebody like a volunteer or an employee would feel like an imposter. Like, really advocate for that pay equity and pay transparency. Like, push for racial equity training, ask to make diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy plans be just as important as like winning grants or increasing revenue. And this goes for things like benefits too, and even like paid time off. Make sure that it's actually inclusive of all women and all people with disabilities, and, you know, all the kinds of different folks that you actually want to retain in your field. So I think that's what I would really recommend.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all those recommendations. Now, I want to pause and I want to encourage our attendees to please ask questions right now. We have time to pause a little bit for some questions. And there's different ways you could do this. You could use the reactions there and, oh, I guess, well, yeah, raise your hand. I do see it. You can select raise your hand and I will call on you and I can unmute you. Or if you'd like, you can submit your questions in the chat. So we'll give you just a second to do that. And also, if we'd like to maybe share your own reflection on imposter syndrome, that's also something that we have a little bit of time to entertain right now. So we'll give you a minute to see what questions you have. And while you're thinking of your question, okay, I see somebody, Yvonne Romero, I'm going to call on you. So let's see. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Thank you, Yvonne.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you again for having this forum. It's really super insightful. And I've had a question for mainly for everyone, really. I'm wondering if in the instances where you've experienced, you know, this questioning of your intelligence or of your capabilities, if after, like on the other side of that, whatever the outcome was, if you ever felt validated by other people in your field, that like other white people in your field, pretty much, if they ever recognized that and acknowledged that and told you about it, and if they did, how that made you feel. That's it.
Thank you. Excellent question. So who would like to respond first? Okay, let's go. Dr. Mera.
I would like to respond to that. So that's a really good question. So before being a diversity, equity, and inclusion facilitator, I was a scientist. So I have a PhD in molecular biology and biochemistry, and I acknowledge I am so white passing. Like, I am the rana platanera of my family. Everybody else is darker skin, more melanated, and, you know, has experienced a lot worse racism because of that. But while I was in graduate school, I had super imposter syndrome. Like, every single day I was like, oh, these people are smarter than me. I didn't have parents that were professors. I don't know what I'm doing. Can I really do this? Am I just like a diversity, you know, add to this group? And I remember being super nervous about designing my science project, like my thesis. And I spent so much time on it and I was really worried. And we got to present it to each other, like as a class. So we could give feedback to each other before we had to go and like show it to our boss and, you know, have a little more stuff at stake. And I presented, and afterwards I was like, oh, is this really good enough? And like, not in that moment, but I remember like maybe like 6 months later, almost a year later, one of my friends who's white, she came up to me and she was like, you know what? I remember that day when we were presenting our thesis ideas to each other, and you were so far ahead of everybody else. I was like super impressed. And I had no idea because I just kept on thinking that I totally hadn't cut it. So
how did that make you feel?
Oh, I mean, to be honest, at the time I was dealing with a lot of anxiety. And so I was like, is that really true? So like, I didn't really believe it very much. It's taken me I think, many years to further integrate, as opposed to keep on believing the inner critic and that imposter syndrome. But at the time, I felt really good about it, and I felt like, oh, I can actually give advice to others and help them. And that sort of spurred me on to do more mentorship and do more work to uplift other people of color and women in science.
Great. Does anybody else have anything to add to that question? Let's go with Queen Victoria.
I was just going to add that for me, I think I had the experience where I had a colleague. Well, I had the experience that I had a colleague that kept taking credit for ideas that came up. And finally, they got around to saying, like, you know, you have really good ideas. I'm like, no shit, Sherlock. You've been stealing half of them. You're lucky I hadn't snatched your wig in front of everybody else. That we're having the conversation. I'm going to let you know that, you know, it's not going to continue to go on. So I'm just putting you on notice that, you know, I've been keeping it cute because I don't want to come across as the angry brown trans woman. Because I am from East LA, you might find out that you're gonna catch me. And I was really nervous, and I thought at first, like, you know, I might get fired or something's gonna go down. And I'm so glad I took the risk of standing up for myself, because they got it. They backed up, and they also were able to come out the other end and acknowledge that they were taking my ideas. And that was a shift for me. Thank you.
And yeah, yes, Lina.
I just wanted to add, so in the story that I told before, one of the ways that I like validated what I was like feeling is that I talked to one of my white classmates who was on the team with me. And she was like, yeah, she was in my section. So we had a friendship. She was like, yeah, I really don't understand why that is. And like, it's kind of weird, like what's going on. And what that validated what I was seeing, but it also confirmed to me that imposter syndrome is just white supremacy on the interpersonal level, and that white people know, they see it, they understand how it plays out and how it can affect people and make them question themselves. And that it wasn't up to me to internalize this language of imposter syndrome. I had to understand that this is white supremacy playing out, and that if I want to challenge white supremacy, that is what I have to do. And that white people also have a huge role in doing that's their work that they have to do, because I think that white people are aware of the way that they treat people of color and Black people. And we have to stand up for ourselves and draw those lines, like Queen Victoria was saying, but white people also have to do their work.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to move on to another person that has a question. We have Isabel. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hi.
Hello.
Yes, thank you everyone for providing this space and just for your time as well. So I work at a nonprofit where like the work never stops, right? You never like achieve your goal. And so I guess right now we're just like in a really weird time of like miscommunication, and our goals aren't really clear because shit in the current administration is like not going the way we all thought it was going to go, right? And so my supervisor and I were both like panicking, and we're like, what are we even doing? Like, what are we even doing here? Are we helping anyone? Like, are we useful? And so we managed to be like, you know what, let's like have a meeting with both of our supervisors, which are also like women of color. And so we were like, hey, like, we feel like, she was like, I'm a director and I hold that title and I don't feel like a director. And I was like, I haven't felt this useless since my first job out of college, you know, to where we're like, what's happening? Like, is it us? Is it? And so it was really disheartening, because the only thing that they met us with was, we appreciate both of you for sharing your feelings. And that was that. There was no like, and you know, me being like super way under their titles, I'm like, I don't think that if a person was ever like, hi, I feel useless, like I work for you, would be like, wow, thank you for your feelings, that's really great. Like, it was just really, I don't know, it was heartbreaking and like infuriating. And I was like, what? And so I guess my question is just like, when you don't have that support from people that even look like you, like, where do you find that? Like, where do you find the will to like talk yourself out of the fact that you feel absolutely useless?
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think especially I'm guessing the work that you do with a lot of the policies that are happening is very personal, right? And so many of us are very closely related to the work that we're in. And so first I want to just tell you that your feelings are valid, and I could see how it could be very discouraging. What does anyone want to help address it? Like, how do you handle when you're not feeling supported, even from folks that are close to your identity that you think would be supportive of you?
I think, I feel like when it comes into those spaces, I gotta ask myself, like, what am I doing in this space? And the answer, like, what do I need? Like, do I need to just like collect my paycheck and go home? Or do I want to grow in this company? Do the people in my space want to see me grow? I think once I started asking myself those questions, I was like, okay, like, let me stick around until I figure my other cards. Because I think it is very discouraging that they're like, oh, thank you for your feeling. It's like, no, there's obviously a system that we're creating here that I don't feel valuable. And like, that's not coming from me. I'm not here working for myself. Last time I checked, you make probably a lot more money than I do. You know, there is a way of managing folks that can help folks not only do their job well, but also grow in their job and to get more skills and, you know, really kind of like build your resume in a way. But like, if they're just kind of being really cut and dry, it's kind of like, what do I need from these folks? If it's a paycheck, I'm gonna get my paycheck. But moving forward, I know where I need to pivot. I think sometimes, especially in nonprofit spaces, I used to work for nonprofit, you get so connected to the work and you're like, yo, I know that I'm doing all this work and I know I'm doing this, but like, sometimes it's like people just exploiting you. And they're like, oh, thank you for your film. Like, wow, you couldn't take a second to be like, you are bad. Like, you could have just not entertained me for that good 5 minutes. Like, it was just, oh, thank you for your feelings. It's very lackluster. And so like, it sucks as that's happening. And like, sometimes I just have to reevaluate my space and like, okay, do they want to see me grow? I don't think so. And I have to just pivot in ways that, you know, obviously feel safe because it's a pandemic and I understand that too. But yeah.
Thank you. Let's see, we have one more question from Leonel Velasquez. Okay. Let's see, did it work?
Yes. Well, I'm gonna speak as a man. So I love my wife. I love my wife, but I don't know how to explain to her, or I don't know how to say it, to make her feel empowered. So yeah, because sometimes I don't know how to explain that, but I really want to make her feel that she has the power. She has power. I don't know what do you recommend to do? What do you recommend to say to her?
Thank you. Thank you for asking that. And I'm hopeful that some of the information we shared today and just being more informed and learning about all the social forces that contribute to women feeling like they're not empowered might be a helpful first step, right? Just to realizing that it's not just in her head if she doesn't feel empowered. There are so many real barriers that contribute to that feeling. And that in a way is very empowering. That is what the kind of the goal of today in many ways is, that we want to tell you it's not just in your head if you feel insecure. It's not just in your head if you don't feel supported. You literally are not supported in many ways. And so I think the first thing you could do is validate that if she's not feeling empowered, there's many reasons why, because there's so much work to do. But and that could be a good first step. Does anyone have any other thoughts around that, on how we can, if we feel like a woman in our lives, if we want to support her, make her feel more empowered, what are some suggestions?
I guess I would say it's a hard line to straddle, I think, because I'm sure you want the best for your partner and for her to, you know, to know how amazing she is and all of the power and intelligence that she holds. But I think thinking about the people in my life that I want to empower, and I want them to know how great you are. And I'm like, why don't you know that you are like kicking ass? Like you're doing this thing. It's a personal journey, and all we can do is like show up for people and support them and affirm them, and also let them know that when they are having a tough time, like, but you can overcome this because you've overcome these other things. You've done this, this, and this. I've seen you. I know that, and be really the support that they need, and let them tell us how they want us to show up for them, I think is most important.
Thank you. Really good tip. Let's see what other questions, if you want to put one in the chat, we probably have time to take a couple more questions. So don't be shy. What other questions do you have? I'll give you about another 30 seconds to see if you've got something that you want to ask. And since I'm not seeing any more questions, I do want to go back to the original question or last question about, you know, maybe the feelings of validation that we might get when a white person validates our work. I'm hopeful that as we continue to uncover a lot of the advantages that are unearned, we might hopefully move away from needing that validation, right? We don't need their validation. And so that's just one more thing that I want to add to that. Okay, well, maybe we'll have a couple more questions, but while I do see a hand. Okay, let me get this person here. Whose hand is raised? Okay, Lisbeth. Oh, I think you can unmute yourself. Let me know if that worked. Oh, there you go.
There we go. Can you? Okay, perfect. No, I just wanted to add on about like validation. I'm a first year English as a second language teacher at an elementary school during this crazy year. So we started virtual, and we've just recently gone in with concurrent teaching. And I feel like that's one thing that I've been kind of trying to, I guess, kind of get from my fellow colleagues, like get validation from them. And I like, you know, slowly but surely, I'm kind of realizing that maybe I don't really need their validation, because I know that I'm beginning to be more confident in my capabilities a little bit, even though I may not get validation from them. And I kind of have a connection with Lionel a little bit, except I'm the one who is kind of like always, I guess, putting myself down and thinking that I'm not capable. And I have my boyfriend who always is like, he's always being really supportive and saying that I am very much capable. I can do this. But it's so hard to just really like, believe that within yourself. And considering that, I think for me, like I work at a school where a huge percentage of our student population is Hispanic and low-income families. And it's kind of hard to work within an environment where majority of the teachers are white. Basically, I think I'm one of the very few. I think there may be like a couple other teachers who are Hispanic. And it's just kind of, I think that right there is kind of like it was a little intimidating for me. But I think I'm beginning to be more comfortable in saying that, yes, like, I am supposed to be here. Like, this is where I need to be.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And wow, what a hard year to start as a teacher. So thank you for the work that you do. Do folks have thoughts about this question? Like, again, you're new in your career, and so you have a lot of extra self-doubt, perhaps. Any thoughts on that?
I was gonna say, like, you're already like doing the work. You're already calling it. You already know how you're feeling. And I think when it comes to doing something new, you got there, right? Like before you got to that position, you were doing a whole bunch of the things to get there. And even if you don't do things the way things are supposed to be, you're still doing something. And sometimes that something could be very unique to whatever that space needs. So like, you already got it. the thing is, you may not even know, but those teachers might be looking at you like, yo, but what's going? Oh, but the class is always popping in there, like, you know, like, but without you even knowing, because like all you're most like, and I think I always have this conversation with, so like, you're most likely probably doing 110% and not even knowing it, just because you're capable of doing all these great things. And I totally get spaces and trying to create spaces for, because you're, you know, at work, you're supposed to feel like a good feelings between your coworkers, that, you know, that we're all respecting each other's work. And you'll find people in that space that you're able to have good conversations with. I feel like when I have conversations with folks, the way I got raises in my job is because I was talking to my coworkers. They was like, yo, you know, I'm getting this much. I was like, oh, hold up. What you said? And they was like, oh, they said this. So like that community was quick. I was like, Mira, I heard that so-and-so was out here making this much. And so, well, I don't say that, but you know, that community, like, yo, get your coins. And so when you start having that space and feeling comfortable, because obviously not everybody, you know, is, you know, could be part of that community. But when you do, you know, you start to be like, oh, wow, like, okay, I get it. I see it now more. But yeah, you're 100% already doing that work, and that's real.
Yeah, and I want to add to what Stephanie said, because maybe it's not needing validation, but it is a good idea to build your community of coworkers, right? You do need your champions. You do need folks that could check, like, did I really screw that up? Was that in my head? And they could say, no, not at all. Or like, yes, and here's how. You know, it's good to have a sounding board. It is helpful to have people help you along the way. Yes, Queen Victoria, what did you want to add to this?
I just wanted to add, being aware and recognizing when you're feeling fraudulent is one thing that I think is important to recognize, right? To know, like, oh, okay, it's coming up for me. This is imposter syndrome is coming up for me. Leaving behind perfectionism. I think a lot of us have been told, like, you have to be better. I remember the movie Lina. She talks a little bit about that. And kind of sometimes you got to que te valga madre, you know, like, you just got to do it for you, because that's what you need for yourself. And I think it's a hard place to get there. And I think collectively too, as a Latina trans woman who went from working within the nonprofit industrial complex, because that's what it has become, and like the service industry. Not that it's bad, but also I feel like collectively as communities, we have been made to feel that we can't own and run businesses, and that is a lie, right? Sticking to the facts that we can is one of the things that is important for us to keep hold of.
Love it. Sticking to the facts. Watch out for the stories you tell yourself and stick to the facts. Okay, I'm going to call on Juliet. And I think you can unmute yourself.
Am I unmuted now?
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to also speak to what Elizabeth was talking about, and also Lionel for his wife, to feel more confident, especially like in a situation, like where you feel like outnumbered, or you're like the only one or one of a few minorities there, and or Latinas, or, you know, people of color in like a white room. I think it's important to remember, like, part of the self-talk you're saying, Brenda, is that we have to remember that we're bringing a lot to the table, because they're all homogeneous. They're all of one background, and they have no difference in their experience. And what we're bringing is like, and some in some environments and capacities, we're kind of seen like a unicorn, like, oh, that's a person of color, what do you think? You know, so in a way, sometimes that's like, that can be unfair pressure to represent. But say you're in a scenario where that's not happening though, and you're coming into a situation where you don't know if your voice is valued or if your presence is valued. And I think it's important to remember that, yeah, you're bringing a lot to the table. Remember all those other things you've done in your life and you've accomplished and helped people to bring you right there to that moment, that's like a lot. And they don't know that. They're not necessarily looking at your resume. They don't know all what you learned and what you chose to study and what skills you chose to pick up and who you know, have a passion to serve. But, you know, I think it's that's important to remember in that space that what we're bringing to the table, we're bringing a lot, and not to shrink, because I do that too. I'm kind of like, whoa, nobody here is like me, and nobody understands really all the stuff that I've been through, that is going on in my head right now, that brought me here. They have no idea. But I have to remember that positive stuff too, what brought me here. And a lot, you know, has brought us here. And, you know, try to stay firm in that, you know.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. Very good reminder that we bring a lot of value. I'm going to I have one more question from Money. I'm going to ask her to unmute, and then we'll start to wrap it up.
Hello. Can you hear
Hi.
me?
Hello.
Okay. So my question was just, we've been talking about imposter syndrome at work and like in professional environments, but I feel as if I've also experienced imposter syndrome in my personal life and like personal roles of like being a queer person or like being a daughter, like a good enough daughter, what it means to be a daughter. And if the panel could speak to maybe how you're overcoming those feelings in personal life roles as well.
Yes, let's go with Queen.
Yeah, I'm just like, yeah, to all of them. I have it even like when a guy comes up to me and is trying like spit game or whatever. My biggest fear is my life going to be in danger because they're going to clock me and find out that I'm a trans woman because of the depth of the bass in my voice, right? I have it when I go to the bathroom and I'm like, are people going to find out that I'm a trans person because my pee sounds different hitting the water? Like little minuscule stuff like that have really impacted my life, and being aware of the fact that that also just in my family life, for example, as a Latina and a matriarch in my family, like I wonder, like, am I good enough to carry the mantle of being the matriarch of my family? Because recently my mother passed away, and now my father. And then I had the tribe within my family and the tribe within my community, my family, that were there to remind me the power that it took to be who I am and how I created and forged for myself the space that I have, right? Including not having access to education in the sense of like a degree, but I have created a path for myself and become an expert in my field through teaching myself, through inhabiting and taking up space. And I think the takeaway is acknowledging that those feelings are there and moving past them and knowing that you deserve and are worthy of the support, are worthy of the investment. Because the biggest thing that would always bring it out is either in my family being celebrated as the matriarch, or at my job when I got a promotion and I felt like, you know, did I really deserve this? You know, am I going to be able to hold it down? Am I able to come through the other end? But the thing is, I'm a chingona. I've always been. That's who I am and who I will always be. And I think that's the story that we have to reclaim and retake, is that we've gotten to the place we are because we are worthy, and we've gained the skills to be there, and to even claim more and manifest more is within our reach.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much. With the little time that we have left, I'm going to just do a quick round robin to just share, you know, your one rapid fire, your one nugget of what you would recommend to someone that is experiencing imposter syndrome. And I think I'll start with Lina.
I would say remind yourself you are where you are because you worked and you deserve to be there. Nobody is giving you these gifts and being like, oh, I feel bad for someone, so I'm going to do this. Like, no, you deserve to be where you are because you worked for it.
Love it. Thank you. Let's go with Stephanie.
I'm just gonna say that, like, just because you may not feel confidence or maybe you may not feel worthy does not mean that you are not worthy. You 100% are who you are, and you're 100% worthy of all of the things, regardless of the things that we tell ourselves. You know, having confidence isn't, not having confidence should not allow you not to get the things you deserve, okay? Because, like, yeah, that's what I'm gonna say, yeah.
Love it. You're worthy no matter what. You're worthy no matter what. And remind yourself of that. How about you, Dr. Mera?
I would say, you know, track your successes to shake off that inner critic and the outer critic, and recruit that buddy or ally or friend to help advocate for you in the workplace. If you're always getting interrupted or somebody's always stealing your idea, have that person be like, oh yeah, Queen Victoria just said that. So great thing you amplified her.
Yes. Okay. How about you, Queen?
Well, you know, I have the not so PG one, which is que te valga madre. Is, you know, separate feelings from fact. I think that's what gets us caught up at times.
I love it. And the one I want to leave you with, I mean, I think everything, there's been so many powerful things. The one little nugget that I want to give you a little tip is, of course, we're all going to feel self-doubt. And many times that creeps into our language. And it comes up and when we say things like, well, I don't know, or I'm just checking in, or I'm just doing it. Like, think about rereading your emails and looking at where the justs are to remove, where the I don't knows are, and own your voice, even when you have a lot of fear and doubt. So that's what I want to leave you with. And I just want to say thank you so very much for joining us. This is phenomenal. We loved speaking to all of you. We did email you a link of a resource, and I think maybe we'll put it in the chat as well, but hopefully you all got that PDF that you can download. We've got some resources for you. I want to recommend that you please listen to the Bag Ladiez podcast, that you listen to the UBP podcast, that you find out about FLUX. And thank you again. Thank you to our sponsors, Cielo. I love that you supported us. Thank you to Bloomerang, donor supports. So thank you, everybody. Muchísimas gracias y hasta luego.
Oh, gracias a todas.
And thank you to our to LC for the ASL interpretation. Thank you so much. Muchísimas gracias. Bye-bye.